Good morning, everybody. I am going to be giving you a little bit of a review today of what you probably, hopefully, learned and remember from 8th grade, but if not, that's why we're reviewing it. So we're reviewing the American Revolution because technically our class is supposed to start with the Civil War, but this American Revolution was about 90 years before that. So we have to make sure we kind of understand the whole road to get us through. So right now, go ahead and get out some paper, and I'm going to give you your topic first. Remember that when you set up your Cornell note paper, just like we did last time, you are going to put the heading up here on the right, name, date, and class period. You are going to put the topic, and then once you write the topic on the topic line, you're going to write our focus question. And eventually, these focus questions are what I kind of quiz you on. So our goal today is to figure out what influences lead the colonies to declare independence from Great Britain. And hopefully you remember that that's who they declared independence from, but that's why we're reviewing. So first, make sure you've got the heading correct on your paper. You've got your topic, founding of the United States, and then start with that question. What influences lead the colonies to declare independence from Great Britain? So by the time I'm done in a few minutes, you should be able to tell me at least two things that help the colonies declare independence. Okay, starting off, the first of the influences is a philosopher you might have learned about last year in world history, John Locke, and he came up with something called the idea of natural rights. In his view, all people had natural rights simply by birth. And he actually defined those rights, and they might sound a little bit familiar. He said that natural rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Now, if you've heard that phrase before, life, liberty, and pursuit, you've heard it before, but it's a little bit different. I want you to think about how you've heard it before, and we'll see how that changes a little bit. It becomes the basis of the Declaration of Independence. And because John Locke was a philosopher, he wrote many books. One of the people that read them was Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson took those ideas and blended them, as you're going to see this week, into the Declaration of Independence. What John Locke said was that people have the right to rebel against an oppressive government. So those ideas of life, liberty, pursuit of property, and that people had the right to rebel against an oppressive government were the ideas that John Locke contributed to our Declaration of Independence, and that's John Locke over there on the right. I don't know. I think I'd swipe left on him, but poor John Locke. Okay, so the first of our influences is John Locke and natural rights. There's a group of ideas that emerged in Europe, and it was a movement you learned about last year. And it's something called the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a period of time in Europe where there was a rebirth of reason and science, and it came after the Dark Ages. So the Dark Ages were a time when there was kind of superstition and people were just kind of ignorant, kind of unenlightened, we could say. And that was followed by this age of enlightenment. Notice I have that word light highlighted in there, and I have the dumb light bulb. I'm going to make you draw that in a minute. The Enlightenment was more reliant on science and reason and learning. And so, because of this, a lot of these famous philosophers that you heard about in world history emerged and wrote their ideas. They wrote their ideas on all kinds of things, from science to space exploration to religion and politics. And in this case, their political philosophies are another influence on the American Revolution. So we have the Enlightenment movement itself, and we have particular Enlightenment philosophers. Rousseau and Voltaire were ones you learned about last year, and of course, John Locke, who we just learned about. So, John Locke in particular, but Enlightenment philosophers in general, were another influence on the colonies having a revolution. And of course, these things are the baseline. It's going to be the actions of the British king and the British soldiers that are going to finally push the United States to rebel against England. Right now, I want you to take 1 minute and I want you to make on the left-hand side in your margin on the left a little sketch of that light bulb. And it doesn't have to have boots and gloves and all that stuff, but I want you to make a little sketch. I'm going to time you for 1 minute before I go on. And the reason I do that is it gets that idea in your brain. When you see light bulb, I want you to think enlightenment. And then I want you to associate it with that reason and science. So that's why I make you do these little drawings and sketches. All right, I'm going to time you for 1 minute. You can go ahead and start. Okay, 30 seconds more to make the world's best light bulb, please. And then we're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, once your light bulb is done, I want you to go ahead and underline enlightenment at the top of your paper, and we're going to go to the next slide. Now, this picture is an example of a primary source. So we're going to see a lot of different primary sources in this class. On Friday of this week, we're going to talk about what a primary source is, but this is a political cartoon. And normally in class, I'd ask you in your groups and pairs to write down what you see, and we'll start doing that, phasing that in as we go through. But right now, I just want you to think about this, and I'm going to kind of go through the features with you. So this is a political cartoon from the 1700s, 1770s or so. And notice at the bottom there's a caption. The caption says, "The horse America throwing his master." When you're looking at a primary source, your job is to dissect all the symbols, all the stuff going on, whether it's a map, a chart, a picture, a cartoon like this. And that's going to tell you more about the ideas we're studying. So we know who the horse is supposed to be. The horse is supposed to be those 13 American colonies. And the rest of it, throwing his master, you can see that the horse is throwing off the person that's riding on his back. If you had to guess who is writing, who the writer is, I want you to write down your guess. Hopefully you're using pencil, but write down your guess. Okay? I get all kinds of guesses on this one. I get George Washington because of the hairstyle. But if you think about it, since this is supposed to be the colonies and they're rebelling against England, then this is most likely the King of England. The King of England was King George III, and you could kind of tell by his clothes. He's wearing like a nice suit jacket. He's got a royal insignia. And more important is what he's holding in his hand. This is a rider's crop. If you're familiar with horses, formal horse riding, you would tap the horse to make it go with the riding crop. But if you notice, the king on this riding crop has all kinds of sharp blades, axe, knives, swords. If he hits this horse with that, he's going to injure it, and that horse is going to rebel by throwing him off his back. So this whole picture is symbolizing the American Revolution in just one cartoon. You have these 13 colonies. They're being treated badly by the king, and as a result, the king is getting thrown off that horse. A little bit more going on in the background. You notice this soldier here is running in to help. Now he's running in to help the horse. And I want to see if anyone can email me the correct answer of who you think this guy in the back is. There was a country that helped us during the American Revolution fight against England. So I want you to email me with just the name of that country, and I'm going to give you extra credit for that. Okay, so we've seen an example of a primary source, and we're going to finish up by just giving you some, hold on a second here. Finish right there, we go. So as a result of John Locke's ideas of natural rights and the Enlightenment philosophy movement itself, Thomas Jefferson is seeing what's happening in the 13 colonies and decides it's time to rebel against the King of Britain. So he writes the Declaration of Independence. We're going to be looking at the Declaration itself. It's actually a pretty short document, and we're going to look at all the parts of it because mostly it's a huge list of complaints about what King George has done or not done for the colonies. So we'll be seeing that later this week. But Thomas Jefferson's the main author. It's going to be signed by representatives of the 13 colonies. And you might think, hey, it's July 4th, right? That's when we, break out the fireworks, we celebrate. The first 4th, where they actually released this declaration, they were actually terrified because what they were doing, and they knew it, was committing treason against the king. And if you've never heard that term treason, it means betraying your country. And if you were ruled by a king, treason against the king is punishable by death. So when these guys signed this, they were very nervous and they pretty much knew that they were signing, like their death warrant. And I'm going to show you that later this week of kind of what that was like for them. Okay. We're going to finish up talking about a couple more influences you should know about. One was a philosopher named Thomas Paine. He was another British writer, and he actually took the initiative to write a pamphlet called Common Sense, where he says that the colonists, the English colonists in the American colonies, should rebel against King George, and it was their right to do so. And that title, Common Sense, became like, well, of course we should do this. We should rule ourselves. So in addition to John Locke and the other Enlightenment thinkers, Thomas Paine would be a main influence as well. All right. So finishing up, on the left-hand side, you have Thomas Jefferson, and on the right-hand side, you have King George III. July 4th of 1776, 13 British colonies in America declare independence from Britain. Now, that does not mean at all that they were independent. They knew that what they were doing was not just treason, but declaring war. So now these people in the colonies had to form an army to fight the best army in the world, which was the British Army. And we'll be seeing a scene from The Patriot, probably Friday, I think, where you'll see what the battles were like because the British Army was highly trained. They were professional soldiers, meaning that's all they did. But on the side of the colonies had to raise an army, and that meant that they needed volunteers. And these people were farmers or merchants or printers. They weren't professional soldiers. So July 4, 1776 was going to be the beginning of what would be an 8-year war for independence. Thomas Jefferson's the author of the document. We're going to look at all those lists of complaints about King George, and we'll be looking at that document later this week. Okay. What you're going to be doing right now is going back into Google Classroom, and you're going to open a link for the website Quizlet. If you've never used it before, it's basically just a quick way that I can get vocabulary words to you. and you can kind of quickly learn them, play games with them, and then we can have a quiz on them. So you're going to go right now into Google Classroom, and there will be a Quizlet link there. And actually, I'm going to show you that really quick, what it will look like. There we go. When you join Quizlet, yours will say Quizlet Student. You're going to be auto-generated into period 7, and then you're going to see a set. It's going to say American Revolution Review. If you've never done Quizlet, it has all these little parts that help you learn stuff faster. Now, it also has games, a live game we can play together, which we might do next week if I can get it to work. But right now, here's what you're required to do to finish. The flashcards, the write, the spell, and the test. I also want you to play the match game. So you're required to do each one of these parts. I'm going to be showing you later this week what it looks like, but if you've done this before, basically you know you just need to cycle through all of the different flashcards and things to learn them. Okay, that is what you are doing. So right now, go ahead and go into Google Classroom and start the Quizlet. You need to click the link first. It will enroll you, and then this is what you should see, American Revolution Review in in the classroom when you go to Quizlet. Okay, thank you very much.